A very pleasant evening to you. Many thanks for joining us on another edition of the program National Talk on ECWA Television International. My name is Joyce Jakada. We are live on Facebook and YouTube at ECWA Television International. Tonight on the program, we shall be beaming our light on fuel subsidy removal, even as Tinubu directs National Economic Council on palliatives to cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy removal. Again, Tinubu meets with oil marketers over subsidy removal. In the studio tonight, I have Dr. Dagwam Dang, a senior lecturer and head of Department of Public Sector Department and an University, Call, who is also an economist and also an accountant. Good evening and welcome to National Talk.
Yeah, good evening and thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you here, despite your busy schedule, and we're so happy.
Thank you very much, and good evening, viewer.
All right, as Nigerians continue to grapple with the aftershock of the subsidy removal, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has directed the National Economic Council, led by Vice President Kashim Shettima, to devise a means and begin working on interventions to mitigate the impact of fuel subsidy removal on Nigerians. This is coming as oil marketers who visited the president on Wednesday announced their intentions to donate between 50 to 100 mass transit buses to help cushion the effect of fuel subsidy removal. I would like to ask you, Dr. Dagom, what do you make of this fuel subsidy removal? I recall that during the inauguration of the president, he made the speech that fuel subsidy removal, first subsidy is gone, and it generated a lot of reactions from Nigerian stakeholders. And the conversation is not really about the removal of the first subsidy, but a lot of people question the methodology. And I would like to get your reactions on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And at least you've given the background that a lot of people didn't question the policy, because I think the policy of the subsidy removal is long overdue. That even the common person, in the market would definitely tell you that let them just remove the fuel subsidy, because when they give you the economics behind the fuel subsidy, you definitely agree that it should be removed. Yeah, but the methodology is where what people are questioning. Yeah, because I think it's just a policy statement given in his inaugural speech, which a lot of people, have a problem with that. I personally, I look at it that yes, but I think he's trying to, there are different ways. Everybody has a method of doing things. Let him just announce it and tell Nigerians that the new sheriff is in town. And during the campaign, he said that he's going to remove it if you like. Strike till thy kingdom come.
That's true.
And then he wants to live up, and you can see what is even happening now. But you see, I think the last administration that he inherited, which is the same party, they said that they've provided for subsidy up to June. So we're expecting that he can announce that his inaugural speech that fuel subsidy is gone from 1st July. Then you see people start preparing. So that's where a lot of people have problem. Myself too have problem with that. But as it is, he has removed it already.
That's true.
The policy statement, and everybody has complied. And now we're seeing fuel in the filling stations at 537 naira, at 550, and so on and so forth, depending on the filling station. Yes, we welcome it because it has come to stay. But the only problem we have is that any policy that is going to touch the common man, you should have a sort of palliative succor that the impact will not be heavy. And that is what is lacking from the policy statement he made. Because to me, he will have had some kind of cushion effect. Just like other removals that were done, partial removals that were done by Abacha did it, he removed subsidy, and there were palliatives at that point in time. And then apart from the palliatives, he told us what he's going to do with that partial removal of the money being saved from the removal of the and you bear me witness that we had the Petroleum Trust Fund, PTF, at that time, that the former President Buhari headed, and you bear me witness that definitely there were a lot of achievements based on that PTF, because we saw where the money went to after saving from paying subsidy. Former President Goodluck Jonathan also had a partial removal, and that was when he established the Shopee, and he showed us where the money went to. So that is what we want to hear. If we're spending about 4 to 7 trillion naira on subsidy, then tell us that after the removal, this is what we're going to use the money, so that the common man will now know where these monies will be spent. So apart from that, the issue of having sucre for the common person, because now you know how much people pay. Like myself, I fuel my car, and I am initially, before the removal, I'll be driving that car for like 3 days, regardless of where I'll go, of someone who doesn't earn like me about. So you can see it's seriously biting, and that is it. So that is the negative effects, the aggregate of the micro results that will now build up to macro economic level. An interest rate, they have a kind of correlation that they pull each other. So these are macroeconomic variables that might be affected negatively. But you see, all those things like some of effects, but in the long run, possibly we have better outcome because there will be competition. And so on and so forth.
I think that's what a lot of Nigerians hope for. But quickly, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that beyond Nigerians, there have been reports, especially of some neighboring West African countries, people protesting, especially some motorcyclists, saying that because of the fuel subsidy removal in Nigeria, there's going to be increase in transportation fare. That's somewhere in Cameroon, and this is because it is not just Nigerians that benefit from this fuel subsidy. The likes of countries like neighboring countries like Ghana, Benin Republic, Cameroon, and even some parts of like Sudan, they also like benefit from Nigerians fuel. And people ask the question, like, are we supposed to subsidize for some of these people? And considering the fact that this fuel is not even like legal, it is the subsidized fuel that's smuggled to some of these countries. And no wonder in the viral video, the Cameroonians that motorcyclists were actually protesting and then actually threatening that they are going to have like increase in transport fares. So people say already we have some legal migrants here and they subsidy, and then other people, this fuel is still smuggled to other countries and people benefit from that. So rough practices within it, because beyond some of these neighboring countries benefiting from it, we have some big Nigerians that are also benefiting from this and at the detriment, sabotaging their own country. Like over the years, we saw how that in 2012, the committee was set up to actually probe into that, even though till today we've not had anything about that. No one was prosecuted, and it's always like that, and people keep asking. It's more like tons of corruption and nothing is being done. No wonder a lot of people welcome the idea of the fuel subsidy removal, even though the methodology, like I said, people say the conversation is not about the removal, because we saw that even during the campaign, a lot of, so many of the presidential candidates and talked about, removal of this fuel subsidy, because it's not even the subsidy, it's not beneficial to the common man, but some few individuals, and no wonder. But I would like us to actually watch that viral video of Cameroonians that were actually condemning the fuel subsidy removal, as well as threatening to increase the transport fare in their country. Let's watch that video.
Ande bo min yeyna mon je bere man paray kiliangen no he na on lar Nigeria ka mabbi station min consomata be useni be de prix de plus 150 do jawi plus 100 francs do bodum 200 on malino 230 na para min yeyna mon akari do nyepam be ditata ka son fama yo andi pari ata son be de prix de plus 150 moto 100 francs ma wala dabore agarwaro yeyna mon ite man next sam entangi min do yara malango explique wale
min kama na wanda sa client 237 tini bu fi essence tawara Cameroun olami o winye pam tawara Cameroun tangi 900 hatta mbutu mi loy 1200 ngende desert amma onon client ngendo to client tarniam o wimi yara mo laynde grand marché laynde 200 yata 300 yata ta to mane
ande bo je pare man je bere do je sajo mane Senegal do wiya mun je bam na wiya garwa D'autres destinations sans prendre 150, 150 200, 200, 250. Adonana Kilian and Shalukan.
Paraido jelam no ideman. Mindo wolwina wona ala nyebbam do na ɓuriya min sembe on de nyebbam warti yo ɓuri ko ɗume ha wuro ɗo to nyebbam wala min miɗo min huwata on ɗo laara haala onon man laarele ɓe hoore on ɓedde prix ɗo komin toratamo malla nama futa way मुझे भूख लगी है मैं आपको खाना है आपको मैं को ये है मुझे आपको जनता गारा है निजेरिया कमरून है नहीं चलता है मुझे मोहम्मद तिनुबू ये नहीं चलूंगा अन्नेबो
Isn't this a plus, considering the fact that this threat they are giving out is as a result of the dependence on small gold petroleum at the detriment of Nigerians? What's your take on that?
You see, I think I don't take the argument on the issue of smuggling our refined products to the neighboring countries. It shows the inefficiency on the part of our government. You see, the NNPC Limited controls all the refined oil coming to this country. And then every truck that is leaving, they know the number and they know the destination. Why don't they put trackers? Why don't, so there are inefficiencies from those who are saddled with the responsibility to track the supply chain of these products to their destinations. So these products find their ways to the neighboring countries. It's just like I told someone, I said, okay, for instance, I think the ex-depot price is about 479 naira per liter. So, and then, before, pre-removal of the subsidy, fuel was sold at 197 thereabout. So what it means is that the difference between 479 and 197, that is the portion that the federal government is subsidizing or the federation is subsidizing. So, and then the marketer who is going to take it from the depot is being paid that extra. He is expected to come and sell it at about 197. So after collecting that extra, when you subtract 197, let's say 200 from 479, you're left with like 279. So you're left with like 200 and something. So you'll be given as portion of the subsidy. And that person will take the same product to the neighboring country and probably sell it at that 479. So you can see he has sold it, he has collected the subsidy and he has sold it at that price. And that is how it has been done quite a number of times. And that's why we're feeding our neighbors with the fuel we're subsidizing. But the whole thing is all about governance. So if you don't check corruption, then definitely, when you have the opportunity, you definitely act that way. So and that's why these marketers have been acting that way, because government couldn't put machineries on ground in order. When you know that these trucks are going, truck number 1, 2, 3 are going to Jos, and you know the filling stations are going, you should have mechanism to check to ensure that yes, they've reached there. What is the Nigerian midstream and downstream petroleum authority doing? Because that is a new DPR. It shows lapses. So they are in every state. So they are supposed to now monitor. So that argument, honestly, doesn't hold ground for me. But the economic argument saying, which is bad for our economy, we cannot continue, and then probably competition. Corruption is made up of 3 elements. When there's increase in monopoly, there's increase in discretion, and there's decrease in accountability, then you have corruption. So NNPC was solely the institution that is coordinating this thing. So they import and they give marketers. So you find that there's monopoly. So there's increase in monopoly. Then you have the discretion. They share that their discretion. So you find that discretion is abused. And there's no accountability, because those refined oil being taken from depots are not being tracked, so no accountability. The person in Jos doesn't account to the person in Lagos that, yes, what you've sent to Jos, we've gotten them. So there's no accountability. And that's why we had serious corruption in that regime. So that is issue of the corruption there, that we need to privatize or decentralize to solve the issue of monopoly. And now they're trying to decentralize and also privatize, because now with the pricing now, you find that you see newcomers can come into the country, because now crude oil production, refinery in Nigeria might be cheaper because we have the crude oil. So nearness to raw material is one factor that can attract an investor. So we're expecting investors to now come because they can sell the fuel at the market price. So they can come in and invest in this country and have their refineries and sell because we have the crude oil. So nearness to, and that would be very, very good for us at the end of the day. You see, like coming up of the Dangote, I don't know, coming up Dangote refinery, to us is going to be a big one, because our fuel consumption, our daily consumption is about 60 to 70 million liters every day. They couldn't give us the exact amount because of the fraud that is happening in that sector. So, but Dangote capacity is about 103 million liters per day. So we're expecting, Dangote alone can feed this country, but it's not possible because he's a businessman. He has to export too for better gain and so on and so forth. So, but when we have other competitors like Abdul Saman, that is Boa is building his own refinery in Akwa Ibom. So I think it should be Akwa Ibom. So you can see we have another private sector person trying to now invest in the refinery. So with the removal of the fuel subsidy, we have more coming in. And then I pray that we come up with policy on modular refineries so that we can have small refineries that we'll be able to now. Jobs can be created based on this policy. And then our 3 or 4 refineries we have might be privatized at the end of the day, because government has no business in business. Whether you spend how much on turnaround maintenance, they will chop the money.
I was going to talk about the refineries that we have cut across, about 4 refineries in Nigeria, and how that they have not been really functional, and how can this be revived, and how can it help, and also in this issue of fuel subsidy removal.
This issue of monopoly. You've not given chance to the private sector. So that's we need to privatize. You need to decentralize. So what is happening is that all the refineries is still controlled by government. Monopoly. Send money to them is national cake. They just do small thing and then move away with the money, and nobody challenges them, because from even the ministry, from where the money is being sent, you find that there's a kickback there. So what do you do? That is the kind of country. And then there is no punitive measure. There's no retribution. So it is the corruption is unabated. And that's the problem with these people. People are not held accountable. And as far as you don't hold people accountable,
You can go with anything.
so even with the way it is now, there is a regulator of even the refined oil. The petroleum industry is divided into 3. It used to be 2. We have the upstream. We used to have the downstream, upstream and downstream. But now we have the upstream, midstream, and downstream. The upstream industry is the petroleum industry that takes care of the companies that are into drilling, exploring, developing crude oil. So after developing the crude oil, then transporting the crude oil and storage of the crude oil is midstream. Then storage of the crude oil and transporting the crude oil to the refineries is the midstream. Then refining the crude oil is the downstream. Refining and marketing of the refined crude oil is downstream. So midstream and downstream has a regulator called the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Regulatory Authority. Then the upstream has a regulator, which is the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. So now, the issue of corruption now. These regulators, in fact, I challenged one of my students who is working with the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Regulatory Authority. I said, what is happening? In Abuja, you buy for at 197. What is happening? In Plateau, you buy that then 220 naira per liter. You know, so it's issue of the regulators too are corrupt. So even with the decentralization and what the removal of subsidy, so now government role would be regulation. But regulation is to maintain standard. Maintaining standard. If there's corruption, you don't maintain standard. So, and then that can be overtaken by corruption again. So if you don't punish perpetrators of this, acts in government, if people get away with this thing, there's no punitive measure, there's no retribution. Corruption is being done unabated, then definitely we still have a problem.
Just like the 2012 committee that was started with the responsibility of checking these big wigs that have always benefited from the fuel subsidy, and then till today that nobody has been arrested, nobody has been prosecuted, and on and on. We talk about having regulators, all of these people are known, where they are whereabouts and all of that, nothing is being done, and no wonder a lot of people just thought the same part. But quickly, let's talk about the effect on Nigerians, even though we've touched on that, because a lot of people are saying, oh, what is this? They don't even understand what this first subsidy means. What they understand is the fact that, oh, I used to pay 50 naira, now I'm paying 100 naira or 200 naira. I call a woman telling a tricycle rider that, oh, yours too is also 200% increase, because the effect is felt on almost goods and services as well. Even though the President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, have directed the National Economic Council, led by the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, to actually come up with modalities to see how they can cushion the effect, one of which is review of the minimum wage, which the last one, 30,000 naira, some states are yet to even implement, and now talking about reviewing the 30,000 minimum wage, as well as also looking at some palliatives that can help cushion the effect. We've seen in Kwara State how the government say, oh, civil servant can come to work 3 times a week and then stay the remaining days. This is an effort to just cushion the effect. But then, do you think these measures are actually good enough? We've seen how that it's not going to be forever, but just for the meantime before people adopt to the system. I've had others say income remains stagnated. Salaries have been stagnated, and we're having prices being high, from transportation fare down to even goods in the market. So, like these palliatives that the president is taxing NEC to come up with, reviewing of minimum wage, among others, do you think this is enough to cushion the effect? One of the presidential aspirants of Labour Party, talking about Peter Obi, talked about the fact that, oh, this announcement, like it's more like just taking a tooth out that is decayed, like instead of putting some forms of anesthesia to ease the pain, it was just pulled out. That is how Nigerians are actually feeling the pain as far as they are concerned. But Bola Ahmed Tinubu has taxed NEC. What is your take on this tax?
Peter B is very, very right, and that is why I said that he would have used the first 1 month, that, yeah, we know it has been provided in the budget, to provide these palliatives. But now you've already removed the tooth, which is painful, and then you're trying to now see how you can inject anesthesia and so on and so forth, and see how you can stabilize the person. You understand? So he has already made the announcement. So now he is trying to see how he can provide some succor to the people. But the truth is that yes, today is what? Today is I think 10 or so, 8. Okay, today is 8. So you can see we are still moving on with the suffering. People are suffering. So and then today is 9. So you can see 9, and then people are still not balanced because of the effect of the removal. So he would have he would have planned for the palliatives first before the removal. So, but as it is, we take it that way, and then there are no specifics yet. He only directed the NEC, that is the National Economic Council, to take care of those issues. And then the issue of minimum wage came up, and Labour was saying that give us 200,000 minimum is bargaining. And they have to come up, they have to defend this government now. I think I was asked a question like this, I think on the radio sometimes back, Like, this is not too much. I said, no, labor is not at fault. They're bargaining 200,000 minimum wage. So government should now come up with their own. And I said, what are these civil servants doing? I said, it's not the responsibility of the labor. It's the responsibility of the government for them to check what these civil servants are doing. Are they adding value or they are not adding value? You don't pay someone salary and you don't know what he's doing and what is happening in the civil service. You are in the private sector. I don't think you are being checked. Your performance is being measured. But in the civil service, the upper that they're feeling every year is just a ritual. But that performance measurement mechanism is not in the civil service. So that's the fault of the government. You are the principal. You have agents. You have to ensure that the agent is giving results. You have to ensure that the agent is meeting up to his own terms of the agency relationship. So that is not being done. So that's not the fault of the union. Union is bargaining for its workers. So there must be a meeting point. But the whole thing is that, yes, minimum wage must be increased. You see, transportation is one of the greatest sectors of our economy. You must move goods. You must move persons. So, and majorly, land transport forms the greater part of our economy. Because we're not surrounded by water. Was to talk about water transport and air transport. You know that we've left that for the bourgeois. So the common person is left with the land transport. And the land transport is predominantly controlled by PMS, which is the petrol we're talking about. So anything that touches petrol, you know, it has touched the greater part of the economy. And that's where people are suffering today. And the palliatives would have been before now. Like you mentioned something about the oil marketers that said, okay, they want to, you know, contribute their own quota and come up with about 50 to 100 buses, 50 to 100 buses. Fine is a good omen, but that is what the government will have done first. To come up with these buses, like in Plateau, when you have like 3 buses, Bukurujos, 3 buses, Bukurujos, or 4 buses, you know what that will do to the common person. But you've not brought these palliatives. And people are suffering now, spending how much? If you're living in Bukuru, you're coming for work in Jos, and your salary is 50,000 naira. You're spending 1,000 naira in a day without feeding. 1,000 times 20 working days, thereabout. 1,000, that's about 24,000 out of your 40,000. Then 20,000, you're feeding. How will you take care of your home? And so on and so forth. So it's that bad. It's that bad.
Some people have even opined, oh, if you're talking about civil servants, what about people that are not civil servants? Because they also go to the market,
Yes,
they also buy,
market.
and all of that. I had a caller who said, oh, can the non-civil servant be paid 50,000 naira as well? So I was just thinking, how long will this 50,000 take you? Because if you're saying the government should just give you 50,000, that is it. So what happens after that?
Yeah.
So everybody is thinking of how can the government cushion these effects.
That's
but
true.
we'll continue the conversation. We'll go on this short break. And when we're back, our phone lines will be open so you can call in and make your contribution. What do you think about the fuel subsidy removal, even as President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has taxed the NEC to actually come up with measures to cushion the effects of the subsidy removal? Stay with us. We'll be back after the break.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zuma Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
ECWA TV Africa keeps you lifted 247. Fixes your day and makes it fulfilled with messages of hope and salvation.
Sin and the devil, they always walk hand in hand together.
Christ too and the ministry of the Lord also will be promoted.
This aspect of David's experience we read in our passage of consideration brings this situation very near to ours.
He is majestic in holiness. Praise the Lord.
Groundbreaking shows for every life situation.
Our parents don't tell lies because that's always a problem.
But in the north, we have abandoned education.
If you ask me to do anything for Nigeria, please equip me.
It feels great being on never-ending platform.
Heaven gifted songs to lift your spirit up, pull you out of worry, fear, sadness, and even depression. Keep watching ECWA TV Africa. Follow us on all our social media platforms and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the notification button to keep up with our activities.
If people are engaged with happenings in their country, they will better understand where the government is going wrong.
And once they do, they are better equipped to combat the problem as well as prefer solutions.
On Nigeria Now, every Monday to Friday at 3:30 p.m., we bring you
analysis of happenings in politics,
crime,
security,
and government policies.
Thank you for staying with us. In case you're just joining us, this is National Talk on ECWA Television International. Our phone lines are now open for you to call and make your contribution. I have been discussing on fuel subsidy removal and the impact on our economy as well, even as President Bola Ahmed Tinubu tasked the National Economic Council to come up with measures to cushion the effect on Nigerians. Together with Dr. Dagom Dang, who is the senior lecturer and head of Department Public Sector Department of Annan University, Cole, an economist and also an accountant. We have been discussing this topic, so do well to join the conversation by calling our phone line. So quickly, we were talking about the president tasking the National Economic Council to come up with measures to cushion the effects, while more like focuses on civil servants. Others are saying, so what happens to us that are not civil servants? Because we also move, we also go to the market, we also buy. What happens to us? You made a very valid point that the government needs to actually look into, and I also think that when there is growth in the economy, when there is when there are job opportunities, people are going to be engaged. Currently, Nigeria has about 133 million people living in poverty, and in the world, Nigeria is one of the countries with the poorest. And then with such a very good policy and not having measures to cushion the effect, is like throwing more people into poverty. And that is why it is actually needful for the government to look into cushioning the effect of this policy on the but I would like you to just, I would like to know your thoughts on how can we clear our economy and increase it, like setting maybe new refineries or other measures. How can we actually clear our economy? We've had over time issues of corruption, which has eaten deep and all of that. How can the economy be actually cleared and increased?
Yes, I think you've asked several questions
in one. I know you're capable and well able.
So let me get to talk about the issue of the minimum wage. Yes, the minimum. Normally, government sets minimum wage. It's not only for the public sector; it's also for the private sector. The minimum wage. But you see, for the private sector, you only pay what you feel that you can make profit at the end of the day. You know, because you are in business. You are in business in the private sector, and because you are in business, what determines your spending is the expected revenue. So the expected revenue will determine your spending. How much are you going to spend and have a margin of your profit? So, and that's why you can find out that some in the private sector definitely determine, and sometimes they don't go with the minimum wage. But it is expected to be applicable to all, the minimum wage. It's not only to the public sector. But the whole thing is that in this country, we're seeing that government is the biggest employer of labor, which is not supposed to be like that. The private sector should be the bigger employment of labor. All what government needs to do is to provide an enabling environment for the private sector. But that's not the situation in Nigeria. You see, in Nigeria, like the private sector depends on the public sector, which is not seen in the other climes. You provide an enabling environment for the private sector to do their businesses, to thrive. The rich people in other countries are in the private sector. In the US, the billionaires, you're hearing their names, they are not in the public sector.
Sure.
They're in the private sector. Because that is where ideas move. And that is where innovations earn you huge revenue. So, and you see, they are the ones collecting big money. But you see, in those days, you find people leave private sector, public sector for private sector, because private sector used to be the biggest sector that pays fat salaries. But now, they've stepped up some other government agencies, like the CBN, the FIRS, and the pension, we call it PENCOM, Pension Commission, NCC, jumbo salaries. And you find that some people, very good number of people are leaving the private sector now for the public sector, NNPC and so on and so forth. So, and then anything that has to do with government, politics is a need. So there are decisions that are being taken based on political affiliations and not on rationality, not on efficiency, but based on political interest. So, and that is why you see those agencies are taking over some good hands from the private sector. It is expected that way. But as it is, when a lot of politicians now know that these places pay big money, so they tend to bring their children who are highly inefficient to work in those places. And they are critical to our economy. And that's why I told some people, I said, look, one day we are living in an economy that is a bubble economy, that one day it will burst. What am I saying? You're picking incompetent people to put them in NNPC, incompetent people to put them in CBN, those ones who are not ready to work.
That's true.
They're not ready to work. And those agencies are critical to the Nigerian economy. So the issue of minimum wage and so on and so forth, we have to look at the economy holistically and see how would the private sector thrive. If the private sector thrives, and then better revenue for the government and better government, better platform for government to provide services for the people. So that is one. Then the other question you were asking me about issue of breaking the monopoly, whether more refineries can. Yeah, definitely with removal of the subsidy, now it is at that market price. The forces of demand and supply will control market-based pricing. So when you have more people bringing refined oil into the country, because it is free now, free entry and free exit, more people are bringing in refined oil, petroleum. We find that if you're not selling, you have more of the supply than the demand, you'll be forced to take down your price. But let us not be careless. The activities of these marketers, they can create another they can create a pseudo monopoly by having a cartel coming up to form an association and determine their price. So government should be wary of that. You know, yes, you have freedom of association according to the constitution, but you shouldn't, you know, I think we have another federal government agency that has to do with competition. I think they call it Federal Commission Competition and something like that. It has to do with trying to break down issue of monopoly to make sure that there's competition. They have to look at that kind of cartel. In fact, I could remember a couple of years back, the gas dealers or gas operators in Jos, when you go to any gas filling station to buy your gas, cooking gas, you can get it different. You can get it at a different price because everybody's selling at his own price, depending on how you get the product. But at the end of the form an association, a cartel, and they decided that no, let's control our price. Because I could remember you go to there's one at to the other ring road. I used to buy it very, very cheap. But what they formed that association, so they became a cartel and they were determining their prices. So government should be wary of such pseudo monopolies that can be created.
A lot of people have opined when policies like this are made, there are this group of people that always want to take advantage of such policies. We've seen that during the introduction of the new Naira note, how that a lot of people took advantage of that, selling Naira. Like Nigerians buying Naira, like you use Naira to even buy Naira.
Yeah.
So like they are people that are out there that are ready to take advantage of this policy, and we cannot actually take away that fact. As good, as plausible that this policy is, we've seen so many economists, people that understand and the whole thing have come out to try to make Nigeria see the good in this policy, talking about the fact that, see, we shouldn't be wary. We should not just relax, because there are also those people that will be benefiting from this policy. But again, I want to ask this question: is this policy, is this removal sustainable? And how can the private sector investment, what can the private sector investment, what can they do to cushion this effect? Because we kept talking about the public sector, the private sector, how that the private sector is supposed to be so powerful and attractive beyond and contribute more in the country. So how can private sector investment help in cushioning this effect? Even as we saw oil marketers on Wednesday meeting with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, all in line to see how that the effect of this fuel subsidy will not be felt by Nigerians. Like, think about the poorest of the poor. Think about those Nigerians out there that cannot afford the 3 square meal. People that are living on 011 or 001. How can they actually sustain that? Oil marketers on their own have said, oh, we are donating 50 to 100 buses, transit buses, which a lot of people will tell you this is what government should have done even before making the announcement. But what role can the private sector play in all of
the
this?
The private sector can play 2 roles. One is for them to inject money into the petroleum sector to bring about competition, so that it can bring down the prices down, and the common man will find it more cheaper than how he's getting it today. That is the petroleum prices. Then another way again is to offer part of its profit. That is the private sector stakeholders. Businesses can offer part of their profit as corporate social responsibility, like issue of buying the buses and so on and so forth. So the private sector can come in and help the masses by providing this corporate social responsibility of providing an alternative transportation. That's another way. So that is on the part of donation and being responsible to the community. That is another side, apart from investing into the sector, build more refineries, go into more transporting it if at all we have major importers. Or with the Dangote, you know, we are just praying for the Dangote to really start, you know, in good faith. That's another. But you see, there's this palliative aspect that I think the Buhari government was planning, that the World Bank is still insisting of giving 5,000 naira to 50 million households. 5,000 to 50 million households, I think, per month or so, something like that. It's absurd. I don't know if the issue of this conditional cash transfer or trying to now give small money that World Bank has come up with is not only in Nigeria, but I think it's one angle that the World Bank is trying to see that that is how we can fight poverty. I give you 5,000 naira, you spend today. Is it sustainable? And they're giving us loan. They're saying that this loan should be used to be given 5,000 naira to people. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm an economist. So the socialist aspect Why don't we see how do we now bring in this loan and inject to production so that these poor people can get jobs? It's sustainable. Than us giving them stipends for 6 months, and after 6 months, they don't have the stipends again. So why don't we use that and see how do we subsidize production so that jobs can be created for these poor people for them to work? You can deliberately subsidize some production activities in all the states, and you can't delineate the poor people that can be given jobs in those places. You understand? But you giving them, I don't know, but that is, globally that is what is happening. World Bank is preaching this issue of fighting poverty through dashing money, giving stipends. It's not sustainable.
Very true, not sustainable indeed. Our time is actually fast spent, but I think it's important that we know that when we have economic growth, people are going to be employed, and when people are employed, then we are going to be bringing a lot of people out of poverty, just like Egypt that have adopted the CNG or electricity. I think when we have such a mass transit that go on electricity or CNG, it's going to help in cushioning the effect of this fuel subsidy removal. Nigeria is a great country, and together we can make it great, and we can make it work again. It is on this note that I really want to thank you, Dr. Dagwom Dang, for creating time to speak with us on National Talk. And to our viewers out there, thank you so much for staying with us on tonight's edition of National Talk. We hope to see you next week, same time, same station. Until then, you have a blessed weekend.